They mocked me at my brother's engagement, laughing at my old dress, whispering that I'd never amount to anything. Little did they know, I owned the company they worked for. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I arrived at my brother Jace's engagement party, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. The house was beautiful, filled with our family and friends, but the moment I walked in, I noticed the looks. Whispers followed me, subtle jokes about my dress, my life, and even my career. Evan and Clara, two co-workers I had long suspected didn't respect me, were smirking and exchanging mocking glances. Even Marin, Jace's fiancée, leaned over and said I was always so dramatic. I kept my smile, swallowing the sting of humiliation. I thought about all the nights I'd worked alone, building my company from the ground up, struggling to make it happen. And in that moment, I realized it was time to remind them who I really was. I casually asked Evan and Clara if they worked at my company. They laughed, thinking I was joking. Then I calmly told them the truth, I owned the company. Their smiles froze, and the room went quiet. Every position, every paycheck they received, came from me. Jace looked shocked, Marin speechless, and the other guests murmured in surprise. I didn't yell or humiliate them further, I just let them feel the weight of their arrogance. That night, I understood something powerful, real strength doesn't need to shout. Success is the best revenge, and finally, they had no choice but to respect me. I stepped into the engagement party feeling a mix of pride and unease. My dress was simple, nothing flashy, but it felt right for the occasion. Almost immediately, I noticed quiet murmurs following me from one group to another. People glanced in my direction, exchanging subtle, pointed comments about how I kept to myself or had a quiet life. Among them, Evan and Clara stood out. They were my co-workers, or at least that's what they thought, casually leaning against the wall, smirking as they whispered about my position in the company. She's really doing the bare minimum, Clara said under her breath, and Evan chuckled, adding, I guess not everyone's cut out for real work. I felt the sting of their words, but I kept my expression calm. Inside, a mix of hurt and determination began to simmer. I reminded myself of the long hours, the sacrifices, and the challenges I had faced to get where I was. They had no idea what I had built or how capable I truly was. As the night went on, their whispers followed me, trying to unsettle me, but instead, it strengthened my resolve. I kept my head high, listening carefully, letting their arrogance fuel a quiet, growing storm inside me. Every laugh, every sly remark, became a reminder that this evening would not end the way they expected. I was ready, even if they had no clue what was coming. Dinner had begun, and the room buzzed with chatter and clinking glasses. Evan stood up, raising his glass with a mischievous grin. Clara followed, leaning into the moment, and they made a toast that sent a chill through me. To Lyra, Clara said, voice dripping with false sweetness, may she someday figure out what success really looks like, if that's even possible. A few guests chuckled nervously, unsure whether to laugh or feel embarrassed for me. My cheeks burned, but I maintained a polite smile, nodding as if I didn't hear the jab. Inside, a storm of emotions raged, anger, hurt, but also a quiet determination. As they continued with their smug comments, my mind drifted to the countless nights I had spent alone, building every part of my company with my own hands. I remembered the betrayals, the people who laughed at me when I said I wanted to start something from nothing, and the exhaustion that came with proving myself day after day. Each memory sharpened my focus, strengthening a resolve I had nurtured silently for years. I decided then that I would not let their words shake me. Their mocking was temporary, and their assumptions were built on ignorance. I would remain composed, letting patience and strategy guide my next move. For now, I would absorb the humiliation without giving them the satisfaction of seeing me falter, knowing that the real reckoning would come when they least expected it. I caught my brother Jace laughing along with Evan and Clara, completely brushing off their jabs as if they were harmless fun. The warmth I expected from family felt cold, and a sharp sting of disappointment hit me. Even the people I trusted most seemed blind to what I had accomplished. Marin leaned closer, her voice soft but cutting, saying, "She's always so dramatic." The words sank in, more hurtful because they came from someone preparing to join my family. I forced myself to stay composed, hiding the flash of betrayal behind a calm expression. A quiet determination took hold. If my own family could underestimate me, then proving myself to them, and to those who thought they knew me, would be all the sweeter. I could feel the tension in the room building around me, but I stayed poised, knowing exactly how this evening would unfold. Every smirk, every whispered comment, only fueled my resolve. I began forming a plan in my mind, imagining the moment when they would finally understand the truth. The humiliation would flip, leaving them speechless, and my authority undeniable. Deep down, I smiled at the thought, this betrayal would set the stage for the justice I had been quietly preparing. I slipped out of the crowded dining room, letting the chatter and laughter fade behind me. Once in a quiet corner, I dialed my assistant, asking about a few urgent matters at the office. The conversation was brief, but it reminded me of the control I held, the empire I had built from endless nights of work, risk, and sacrifice that no one here could imagine. Standing there, I let my mind wander over the years of challenges, the deals I had closed alone, the setbacks that almost broke me, and the determination that kept me going when everyone else doubted me. A sense of calm confidence washed over me. I realized that humiliation could be handled without drama or confrontation. There was no need to stoop to gossip or petty remarks. I would let my achievements speak, letting authority and quiet power do the work that insults never could. The satisfaction would be complete when they finally understood who I really was, and the timing would be perfect. With one last glance back toward the party, I adjusted my posture and smoothed my dress. The storm inside me had shifted from anger to calculated resolve. Tonight, they would see that patience and self-assurance could be far more devastating than any outburst. My subtle revenge had already begun, quietly, beneath the surface, ready to unfold at the right moment. I walked back into the party as if nothing had happened, letting the music and chatter surround me like a familiar rhythm. Evan and Clara immediately noticed me, their grins wide and eyes sparkling with amusement. They leaned in, continuing their jabs about my supposed place in the world, clearly enjoying themselves. I returned their attention with a composed smile, the kind that masks everything underneath. Then, almost casually, I asked, "Funny, you do work at my company, don't you?" They froze for a moment, exchanging glances, then shrugged, assuming I was teasing. "Yeah, of course," Evan said, still smirking. Clara giggled lightly, nodding as if confirming the harmless joke. Their confidence was palpable, their arrogance wrapped around every word and gesture. But I felt a quiet thrill, I had set the first piece in motion. The tiny seed of doubt was planted, and soon, their smugness would crumble. I kept my demeanor calm, letting the hint linger just long enough to make them question without realizing what was coming. Inside, my heartbeat quickened with anticipation. Every step, every word, was carefully measured. Tonight would not be about shouting or anger, it would be about presence, control, and letting them slowly understand the weight of what they had mocked. The confrontation had begun, quietly, and the outcome was already taking shape in my mind. I let the moment stretch for a heartbeat, enjoying the slight hesitation in their expressions, then spoke with calm certainty. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I own the company. Every role you have, every paycheck you receive, comes from me." Evan's smirk vanished instantly, and Clara's eyes widened as if someone had switched the room upside down. A soft murmur ran through the surrounding guests, their curiosity turning into astonishment. I could feel the tension in the air, heavy and electric. I continued without raising my voice, describing how I had started the business alone, piece by piece, pouring in long hours, late nights, and relentless effort. I mentioned the obstacles I faced, the people who doubted me, and the countless decisions that nearly broke me, yet every step had strengthened my resolve and built what they now depended on. My tone remained composed, controlled, and unshakable. I let my words land, watching as their confident fronts crumbled in real time. There was no need to shout or demand recognition, the truth spoke louder than any insult could. In that room, the dynamic shifted instantly. I had gone from the subject of their amusement to the one holding undeniable authority, and I could see the realization dawning in their faces. The quiet power of the revelation settled in. For the first time, they were forced to measure the depth of what they had mocked, and the weight of their arrogance pressed down on them. Evan and Clara scrambled to find words, their faces flushing as they mumbled awkward apologies that sounded empty even to themselves. The confidence they had worn like armor moments before was gone, replaced by discomfort and regret. Jay stood frozen, eyes wide, his expression a mixture of disbelief and guilt. He had never truly grasped the extent of what I had accomplished, and now the truth hit him like a sudden jolt. Marin's lips parted, but no sound came out. She seemed completely lost for words, her earlier judgments evaporating in the face of reality. Around us, the guests exchanged quiet whispers, their curiosity and astonishment palpable. The room had shifted in energy, and I felt it keenly, the silent acknowledgement of my authority spreading like ripples. I allowed myself a small, controlled exhale, feeling a strange mix of vindication and lingering pain. Satisfaction coursed through me at seeing their arrogance undone, but beneath it, there was still a trace of hurt from being belittled by people I had once respected, even trusted. The betrayal of their laughter and the subtle dismissals left a bitter taste, yet it was tempered by the undeniable knowledge that I had the upper hand now. For a moment, I simply stood there, letting the weight of the evening settle. The shift in perception around me was unmistakable, and though the emotional sting lingered, the quiet triumph was intoxicating. This was the turning point, the moment when the balance of power quietly, irrevocably changed. I leaned in slightly, my voice calm and measured as I said, "I hope this helps you understand the value of respect." I didn't raise my tone, and I didn't need to, the room had already absorbed the weight of my words. No further humiliation was necessary, the truth alone had reshaped the atmosphere. As I straightened, I felt a quiet sense of authority settle around me. There was no need for drama or pointed reminders, my presence, steady and composed, conveyed everything that words could not. I could see their uneasy glances, the way they shifted under the realization that they had misjudged me completely. Inside, I reflected on the power of subtlety. True revenge doesn't always require confrontation or anger, it can live in restraint, in control, in letting someone witness the consequences of their arrogance firsthand. Sometimes, simply existing as someone they underestimated is enough to speak volumes. Even as the evening continued around us, I knew I would be keeping a careful eye on Evan and Clara. Their careers, now dependent on someone they had mocked, would be watched with quiet precision. The satisfaction of knowing I had shifted the balance, without raising my voice or lowering myself, was enough. Poetic justice, I realized, is most effective when it's silent but unmistakable. Later that night, I found a quiet corner away from the lingering chatter and laughter. Alone, I let myself reflect on everything that had unfolded. A pang of sorrow lingered, the sting of betrayal from coworkers I had once trusted, and the subtle judgments from family members who hadn't truly seen me. It was a reminder of how easily people underestimate others. Yet, alongside that sadness was a profound sense of pride. I had maintained my composure, preserved my dignity, and asserted control without resorting to anger or confrontation. The satisfaction wasn't in humiliating them, but in knowing that the truth had spoken for itself. I had turned the evening around with quiet confidence and measured action. The realization settled in fully, sometimes, success is the most satisfying form of revenge. It doesn't need shouting or theatrics, it's the calm, unwavering achievement that leaves the strongest mark. I allowed a small, satisfied smile to form, understanding that this night had proved more than just my authority, it had shown the power of resilience and quiet strength. Never underestimate the person you think is powerless. The one you mock might quietly hold every card, and when the time comes, their presence alone can rewrite the narrative. Tonight had been a lesson, for them, for my family, and for me, and I knew its impact would linger far longer than any fleeting insult ever could. The following week, I walked into the office with a calm sense of purpose. The atmosphere felt different, Evan and Clara moved around cautiously, their usual confidence replaced by tentative politeness. Their behavior was stiff, careful, a clear sign that they had finally grasped the consequences of underestimating me. I took a moment to observe the space, noticing the younger employees hustling with energy and curiosity. I approached them, offering guidance and sharing lessons I had learned through years of effort and setbacks. My tone was encouraging, patient, and firm, showing that authority didn't require harshness. Respect was earned, and integrity mattered more than dominance. As I moved through the office, I realized that the shift in dynamics wasn't about punishment, it was about clarity. People now understood the weight of their actions and words, and the younger staff had a role model who led through example rather than intimidation. Watching Evan and Clara adjust to this new reality was quietly satisfying, but my focus remained on growth and mentorship. Power, I reminded myself, was most meaningful when used to uplift and guide, rather than to humiliate. That week, the lessons of the engagement party carried into the office, creating an environment where competence, respect, and quiet strength defined success more than arrogance ever could. Over time, I reflected on everything I had experienced, and certain truths became clear. Respect isn't something anyone can demand or force, it is something others give when they recognize your effort, integrity, and consistency. I understood that trying to prove yourself through anger or confrontation only diminishes your own power. I also realized that genuine strength isn't loud or flashy. True authority is steady, calm, and reliable. It grows quietly through persistence, decisions made under pressure, and the ability to maintain composure even when challenged. People often mistake noise for dominance, but it's the quiet, deliberate presence that leaves a lasting mark. Betrayal, I learned, cuts deeply, especially when it comes from those you trust or consider equals. It can sting, and the hurt can linger, but the outcome is determined by your response, not the actions or words of others. Choosing patience, dignity, and calculated action can transform humiliation into validation and disappointment into lessons. These experiences shaped how I approached both work and life. I became mindful of how I treated people, understanding that every interaction reflects who I am, not just who they are. The moments that once brought frustration became guides, showing me that strength is measured not by immediate victories, but by the quiet way you navigate challenges and the respect you cultivate along the way. Looking back, I realized how wrong they had been to underestimate me. Every smirk, every whisper, every laugh aimed to diminish me only fueled the determination I carried quietly inside. They expected me to falter, to shrink under their judgment, but instead, I found strength in patience and resilience. I didn't need to argue or prove myself in anger. I simply moved forward, confident in my abilities, letting the work I had poured myself into speak louder than any insult ever could. Watching their assumptions crumble without me raising my voice was its own satisfaction, subtle, yet undeniable. By the end of it all, I understood that true victory isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's in persistence, in calm control, and in being unwavering in your own worth. They had underestimated me completely, and that misjudgment became my advantage. So remember, those who mock or belittle you rarely see the depth of your determination. Survival is one thing, but thriving quietly, with focus and dignity, leaves the strongest mark. Success itself becomes the statement, and in that silence, you hold all the power. Hey besties! Thanks for sticking with me through this intense story. Imagine showing up to support someone you love, only to be belittled by people you trusted, feeling invisible in your own life. It hurts deeply, but it also reveals your inner strength. Standing tall, staying calm, and letting your achievements speak can change everything. If this resonated, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. See you next time.